Okay, so I'm just going to repeat a little bit just for the sake, so I'm going to save it, put it in a YouTube link, and I can share it here for maybe John to watch. Um, so our standard contract's 4 pages. It's got all of the basics. It's not too little, and it's got just enough so that no one's going to question anything. 4 pages, easy to explain. There is an assignment and markability clause in it. There's a clause in there that allows us as the buyer to file a memorandum on the property, which is great because that safeguards us. And so, just so you guys know, what that does is that it clouds the title. So that way, if and when somebody goes to buy the house, what they're going to do is a title search and to make sure there's no liens or encumbrances on the title, or nobody else has a claim to the title of the property. And that can be like something for probate, like if grandma died and has a great grandson, and 20-30 years later great grandson figures out that like grandma's house was sold, and he's like, wait a minute, I had stake in that house. He can go back and actually file a rightful claim as an heir to get that house. And then the title company that ended up closing that transaction, if they miss that, because that happens sometimes, what they give is an insurance policy. It's called title assure or title policy. And it guards the buyer and the borrower or the buyer and the lender against any claims against the title. So like in the event that something like that happened, the great grandkid would come along, and then the title company would pay out the claim of the grandson, so that the buyer and the borrower would not be affected. Does that make sense? So typically, what you're going to hear is something in the real estate world called a marketable or a clean title, kind of like in the auto world, right? So you get a salvage title, like it's been in an accident, and everybody, so you can't scam anybody. Here, there's no lender out there at all that I'm aware of that will lend money on a non-marketable title. For example, the most obvious example that I have here, you have probate issues, but it's a little bit hairier. But like, let's say there's a tax lien, and the city or the state takes a house in the auction because of unpaid property taxes. Now, if we wanted to buy those properties for pennies on the dollar at the auction, we can, but there's something called a redemption period. Most states have them. It's going to be different in each state. And so I believe Texas is a 12-month redemption period. It might be 6. Let's just say it's 12. So let's say we went to buy a house at the auction. We believe it would be worth 250 grand, but there's $50,000 in arrears and taxes that we come up and pay with cash at the auction. Now we get that house, and there's potentially 200 grand. And we say we got to put 50 grand in it. Well, it's a huge spread, dude. That's $150,000 upside potential. Why wouldn't we do that? Well, here's the thing. So in the redemption period, that 50 grand is going to accumulate interest to us, the buyer. And so I think it's the first 3 months you get 3%, the second 3 months you get 6%, the third 3 months you get 9%, and the last 3 months it accumulates at 12%, I believe, on the 50 grand we put in. But during that 12 months, the one who lost the property and was foreclosed on has the right to come and redeem the property if they can catch up and pay the arrears, pay the taxes, and will basically pay me off. Now, in the event that happened, if I started to do the work on that house, I started to invest the 50 grand in capital to make it better, and that guy redeemed his house, I've lost that money. I can't get it back. There's nothing I can do about it. So we would wait until the redemption period was done to start to, improve it. You following me? But at that point, the title's not marketable. The title it has to go through something called a quiet title action. And that is where an attorney is going to have to go and do something. It's called a quiet title. And they're going to go out. It usually sometimes takes like a month. Sometimes it can maybe take 2. Sometimes it can take 6, depending on some circumstances. Like if there's, grandchildren, progeny way down the line in different places, or maybe somebody died and like they just need to make sure that everybody's alive or nobody's alive. It's not black and white, but there's a process where they push information out into the public to see if anybody has a claim on the title. And if nobody files a claim on the title, They'll quiet the title, and then they'll give a commitment. It's called the title commitment, and the title will therefore become marketable again. But it usually costs like $2,000 to $5,000 to do that. It's still worth it. And now at that point, if you follow me, so we bought the house at the tax auction. The redemption period's done. We've hired an attorney to go and quiet the title. That's been done. So we're what, say 13 months in, well, 15 months in. Now we can go and invest the capital into the house and resell it on the market and make our profit. Because if we did that, an end buyer could come and with like an FHA or a VA or a conventional loan with a traditional lender, and they would lend on the house because the title is now marketable, and a title company would offer an insurance policy on it. Does that make sense? So, one of the reasons, for example, with us and this is good for you to know, Alex, because like that kind of that roadblock question, is anybody else that's going to be impacted by your decision? Like another kind of nuance to that is you're uncovering, is there anybody else that's on the deed or might have claim to the property? Because if we go and do all this stuff and we go to open title and the title company comes back and says, hey, there's an encumbrance on this, like there's this and this, like, well, that's got to be rectified before anybody's going to close on that house. Does that make sense? And that's going to happen. It's probably not going to be, the majority of the time it's not going to be like that way, but we're definitely going to find situations where that happens. Mimi, I need you to wait. You follow me? Does that make sense? So that's one thing to consider. And why am I saying this is because the 4-page contract that we have gives us as the buyer the right to file a memorandum on the property, which gives us equitable claim into the property because we have a purchase contract on it. So that's going to cloud the title. So if we file the memorandum and let's say the seller tries to backdoor us and take somebody else's offer, or one of these buyers tries to snake us and backdoor us and go directly to the seller and cut us out, that gives us some protection because, right, this is business. That gives us some protection where when the title company is going to go and do a title search, that's going to show up. And that's not going to be there. No one's going to be able to, no one's going to close on that deal with that encumbrance there. So that gives us leverage to go and say, hey, like, we will remove the memorandum if you pay us $10,000 because we were going to make 10 grand on the deal anyways. And you cheated us. So like, this is the deal. Does that make sense? I think give me one second. I think it's the Home Depot guy. Hello?
Hey, Mark, good morning. This is Mario Villarreal. I'm calling you about one of the house you have listed in, one second, let me see the address. 86 Copper Bluff?
Yes. Hey, can I give you my my partner's contact information? He's got all the details. He's got everything you need, and he can give you whatever information you're looking for.
Okay, we're talking about Daniel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have his contact info in Facebook, but I don't have his phone number. He actually gave me your number to talk to you. So, who's the owner of the house?
Not us. Not yet.
So
You're the agent. Oh, okay, you're the agent. I got you. Yes. I am. I'm Daniel's partner. Yeah. In the deal, and we've got a contract to buy it, subject to, and we're set to close in the first.
Okay. So you're gonna wrap this up at this point, and I'm sure you spoke to Arturo. He is interested in buying the property. Yes, he wants me to represent him. So I honestly want to make the deal happen.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we can work something out. So have you talked to him?
So Daniel's been handling pretty much every. Okay, yeah. So Daniel, I'm actually on a conference call with Daniel right now, a business meeting, and so he can actually hear you. And he said Arturo is actually going back to the house today.
Yes.
To look at it.
Yes. So he wants to get an inspection done.
Okay.
I would like to send an offer, by the end of the day. so we can get on the contract, and then before he starts spending on these inspections.
Are you familiar with an assignment of contract?
Yes, I mean it's like a wraparound.
So we have a purchase contract already in place with the seller to take over his payments. It's a three and a quarter interest rate. It's a phenomenal rate, and there's already equity in the house. And so he's got a reinstatement fee of like $23,000 on it, and that's going to have to be rectified before closing. And then we have a fee that we have on that too. And so I think the total cash to close from the buyer would be 34,000, maybe 35 grand. So I think 34 grand. And then he would take over the seller's mortgage payments with a low rate, with a low monthly payment, and then he'd just have the house. So we have that contract already set up and structured. And so what we would do is an assignment of contract where he would basically close in our place.
Which title company?
Right now we have it with First Option Title.
First option title.
Yeah.
And you can get the title policy as well.
Yeah. So the reason we use the title company like this is because they're really familiar with creative financing. They're really familiar with wraparound mortgages, seller finance, subject to. The guy that owns it he's a real estate investor and a real estate attorney. He owns like 400 promissory notes. He's super successful.
You guys are wholesaling the property pretty much.
Yes.
Yeah, I done a couple of deals like this at this point. It's just that for Arturo and for a lot of people, this getting creative thing, it's sometimes it's hard to understand.
Yeah.
Them, but I've been able to explain the situation. So as far as realtor commission, so I understand this is not a traditional deal.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to represent and help my client. What is something that we can do so we can work something out? I can review the documents. If you say that you are gonna do the contract, I mean, I would like to review the contract. If not, I can make the contract with the trade when we get a form.
No. We're not doing that. No, we already have a contract. We can send you the contract. That's easy. It's a 4-page contract, pretty basic. It's already in escrow, and then we would do an assignment of contract to the end buyer. So if your guy Arturo wanted to buy it, we would give you the contract that we already have that's signed already by us and the seller for you guys to review. And then if that looks good, it's really simple. It's not, it's 4 pages. It just covers the address, the seller, the terms of the price and all that stuff. And then if that looks good, then we'll do an assignment of contract. You guys can send the earnest money to the escrow company, the title company. And then we'll bring a transaction coordinator in there, and we can just focus on getting it closed up. And you guys, is he going to live in the house or is he going to use it as an investment property?
He wants to live in the house. My question is about the commission. What is the commission that you guys can work with me?
I don't know. Usually the buyer pays the commission. So right now we have $23,000 in reinstatement fee, and we have a small assignment fee on top of that. And so it's off market. Like, I'm also a licensed agent with Real Broker, but I'm not using my license in the transaction. We obviously disclosed that. Yeah.
Real is not much about the wraparounds and stuff like that. They don't get very creative. They don't allow that much, right?
Real will allow anything but me using my license to partake in a wrap. So I couldn't represent somebody on a wraparound mortgage, but I myself can do one.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is kind of like a wrap, even though it's not an owner finance. So that's it. So probably by the time we close in the beginning of December, the arrears will probably be closer to $25K. And then and so that'll be the end of it. So
because at this point, with the property, it needs some basic cleaning and stuff like
that.
Yeah. Some stuff in there.
For sure.
I want to protect my client. I want to protect my friend.
Yes.
Like I said, I'll be willing to work with the flat fee. something, just so, because I do have to show with to my broker.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
With outside of my brokerage, but I don't want to get my license at risk.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, nobody wants to do that. So here's what I would suggest is once Arturo goes to the house and does whatever he needs to do and he decides that he wants to move forward on it, then we will send you the contract. We can send you also a blank assignment contract or assignment agreement, and then we can all maybe hop on a group call together and just work out some of the details about getting you paid and getting the deal done.
Yes. So is Daniel? He's there. He's still hearing me.
Daniel is still hearing you. Yes, he looks like he's awesome. Eating an apple right now, though, or a sandwich. He looks like a good guy. Yeah.
So to be quite honest with you, Arturo has a budget of $30,000. So we will have to work something out with that. I know that it might be a little tight, but it's possible. It's just like this is the situation that he is.
Yeah.
And like I said, about my payment, it will have to cover that, but I'm not asking for 3% or I'm not asking for that,
Yeah.
As long as I can show something to my broker, I really wanna make this deal happen and help Arturo get this property as soon as possible,
Yeah. Okay. Let's see what he thinks, what he wants, and then we can come to the table and try to negotiate something that works for everybody.
Because I know that he wants the house. He just wants to get the inspection done. But
sure.
For me, by looking at the pictures, I just wanted to ask if there's any warranty in the foundation. Or
I have no idea. For us, I have no. I mean, we stopped the guy's house from going to foreclosure. I mean, the guy is in a bad situation. He lives in Nebraska, and his daughter was living there. And so, I mean, we got the subject to contracts, and we're trying to help him out and give somebody else a good deal, a good new property.
Have you talked to Arturo about the entry fee?
That's a question for Daniel. I don't know. I have personally not talked to Arturo, but I know Daniel was there when he walked the property. He's coming back again today. Yeah. Okay. So Daniel said he discussed it when he said he had the money. So it's 34 plus closing costs and a transaction coordinator. So typically this house will go in. Yeah, will be the title will be conveyed in a land trust. With so Arturo.
It's 34 plus the closing costs?
How much
are we looking in closing costs?
I don't know. And a transaction coordinator. So I just did two subject to deals for my family, and the closing costs came out to around $4,500.
Okay, that sounds with the title policy as well.
The title policy. There's a transaction coordination of $1,500, and for a subject to deal, we're definitely using a transaction coordinator that the buyer pays for, and also.
How much is the transaction coordinator?
$1,500.
What? That's a lot.
It's a subject to deal, man. It's a little more hairy. There's a little bit more paperwork going on here.
We're not using a loan for this.
No, the loan for the we're taking over somebody else's loan.
We don't have to deal with lenders and stuff. I think the TC is charging way too much. They usually charge like $300.
No, man. Have you ever done a subject to transaction?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, I've never seen anybody. $1,500 is pretty cheap for a sub 2 deal that I've seen, and I've worked with a bunch of different TCs, and some of them are $2,500, $2,000. Yeah, 300 because I mean you have a whole lot of extra paperwork going, and plus we're doing a land trust on this too. So the land trust just helps guard the buyer from the lender calling the note.
How much is going towards the, let's say the loan? How much is going for the down payment? What is the 35 or 34 that you guys asking for?
The 34 includes the arrears, the reinstatement fee on the loan, and our assignment fee.
Well, how much is the assignment fee?
Like I think it's like 8 or 10 grand right now.
Okay. Is there any way that you could it down for me so I can explain to Arturo?
Yeah. So basically, the arrears, the reinstatement fee per last month's mortgage statement was like 23,000 and change. And because there's been another month of delay, that's I would anticipate that going up to another $1,700. So let's say the if we close on December 1st, I would suggest the reinstatement fee will. I would bank on it being 25,000, and that extra payment would come out of our assignment fee, and so that would give us we as the people that put the deal together will probably be walking away with around eight or $9,000 on it.
All right.
And then
Well,
yeah, does that make sense?
Just break it down for me, and then I'll get back to you.
Okay.
All right, buddy.
Thank you. Goodbye. It's a lot of money for a transaction coordinator. If you want to put your own, you're more than welcome to do that. That okay. I know. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. So there's no need for this guy to be in the picture, to be honest. Yeah. Unless they have some kind of a buyer's rep agreement that we don't know about, which is possible. All right, back to the drawing board. So coming back full swing. So the memorandum just clouds the title. It gives us an opportunity to make money on it, and that's the gist of it. So the Texas real estate contract. See, yeah, this guy didn't know what he was talking about. He's like, hey, can we put a contract on it? I was like, dude, do you know what you're talking about? You've ever done this before? I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to say, like, hey, man, don't blow the deal up. You know what I'm saying? Like, get out of the way. Um, so yeah, so that just allows us to put an encumbrance in the title, so it kind of safeguards our time, and it sucks but that stuff does happen sometimes, and so we will ultimately find a property that does not have a clear title, that might not be able to be cleared, which might not allow us to close. So in the event that happens, there's a possibility that the buyer and the seller would be willing to wait for the process to have a title cleared, which could take a month, 2, 3 months, sometimes more. I don't know, but and so if they really want the deal bad enough, they could just, if the discount's good enough, then they might want to just wait and we'll just delay closing. So we'll see. It just kind of depends on situation by situation. So y'all tracking with me on this? Okay. Some guy last night told me I talk too fast to slow down. an old guy, an old guy from Texas. Um, I do that. Yeah. Uh, Now, the next thing we're going to look at is an addendum and an amendment. And the words very similar and they can be very confusing. But once you kind of get the function, it's pretty straightforward. So an addendum is an addendum. So you're adding something onto the end of the contract that the contract doesn't specify. And an example of that would be like the contract that we sent to Alfredo Cervera, that older couple. That's actually the first deal that they accepted Alex offer on. And so we agreed to help them move, to find find a moving company. So we agreed to help them find a new place to live, help them hire a moving company, and a company to help them sell the stuff they didn't want. And so we put that in an addendum that closing would not be scheduled until these three things are accomplished, because the contract doesn't say that. So we put that in an addendum, or if there's anything unique in an addendum, like for example, like we could put in an addendum that the property is going to be subject to the existing mortgage, or if there was some kind of a hybrid deal where there was a sub two payment takeover, or maybe an owner finance to get the entire purchase price done, like we might have to put that in an addendum and explain it in a little bit more clarity. Does that make sense? An addendum is adding something into the contracts, an additional provision into the contract. An amendment is a modification to the contract that's already in place. So, like, we have to go to Shane King. The contract that we have with him, our option period ends, I don't know if it's the 20th or the 21st. I'm not sure. So, we need to go and get our option period extended by a week. And so that is going to require an amendment to the contract, because it's an amend. We're amending something, or we're correcting something, or editing something. Yeah, you're muted, Alex. I see the lips going, but I don't hear the words. No, no. Oh, so the concept. So yes, and so, but here don't confuse it, because like the addendum is an addition. An amendment to a real estate contract is like, I'll give you, so like the Larchmont contract. So when the buyers gave me an offer, they wanted a couple of things done, which was like a stove. They wanted a dishwasher, and I don't know. They wanted I don't know, something silly. I don't know, whatever. Just say a stove and a dishwasher was put into the, like in the, like an addendum on the contract. But then when they had an inspector come, there were a couple of other things that they wanted, so we had to do an amendment to include what was there. Plus, they wanted this, this, and this. And then when we signed it, that amendment became part of the contract. Does that make sense? Yeah, yeah, I get it. So it's like typically an amendment is going to get filed mostly when there's something to do with change in terms, or change in like the dates. All right. So like when we do a subject to transaction, like we're going to have an addendum be sent out, and this is where the transaction coordinator is going to come, that explains what like some of the risks with the subject to, for both the buyer and the seller to sign. Talking about the due on sale clause, like the note's going to stay in their name. It's still going to be on their credit. Like they can still, like if the buyer defaults, like it's going to negatively impact the credit of the seller, like all those things. And like they just need to be aware of that stuff. And there's an addendum in there for that. Okay, you guys following me? So all this stuff just needs to be clear, because this is what the title company is going to execute, and we just need to. It's like kind of the CYA. We need to do it right, especially if I've got my real estate license. Like we can't play around with this. You know what I mean? Um, the other thing, those are kind of important. Another thing that we have is like the option. Now, I actually would go and pitch this guy an option here to do it with an option, but he's probably going to want more money that's non-refundable. So it's like, hey, if we can just give him like a $20 option fee and $500 in EMD, then it might be worth it, because he's already talked about buyers that had interest that couldn't qualify. Why, I don't know. But it might be worth taking a shot at. I don't know. What do you guys think? Maybe Alex and I can go and try to put some eyes on it, and review it a little bit. And if we can get a long enough option period, then it might be worth it. Might be worth taking a shot at. If it's cost us $25 for the opportunity, I wouldn't. Yeah, well, yeah, yeah. So that's but an option though. I'm not. It's like I'm not sure if John was getting this, and I want to make sure that you guys get it. An option is a phenomenal tool, and I'll give you an example of how an option can work. So my friend Sharif Medawar, the Egyptian guy, told me about a deal he did in 1985 with an option. And so he went down to a Caribbean island called Martinique, and went down to a seller who had a piece of oceanfront property in 1985, like on the beach, that he was selling for $1 million. And so Sharif went down there with a certified bank check from Chase Bank in New York with $100,000 on it. And so Sharif negotiated putting that property under an option for 6 months at a $1.1 million price with a $100,000 non-refundable option fee. Okay. But he had 6 months to close, 6 months to exercise the option and actually close. And we'll talk about what that means soon, because this is going to be a phenomenal tool for us in real estate. Phenomenal tool, whether it's our business or like if we want to individually invest in properties. Dude, an option is one of the best things we have available. And so Sharif's story goes like this. He took that option that he had legitimate for 100 grand. He paid for it. Contract was executed, and the option is a contract. And he went back to the United States, and he sold that option to the Marriott hotel chain for $10 million. Yeah, boom, and that was the end of the story. And so, but it allowed him control of the property for 100 grand. Now, it's obviously this is a much larger deal. You know, that was I mean, that's a pretty big situation, and he kind of knew what he was going to be able to do with this. But if we can put an option on a property, we don't have to put earnest money down. We don't have to go to the title company. We don't have to do nothing. We have to do anything. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, man. I mean, the United States didn't invent real estate. Maybe a little bit here. No. Yeah. Yeah. So the big things we're going to look at is addendums and amendments, purchase contracts, um, and then options are going to be a big deal too. I think options are going to be great. And really, if we could, because like correct. So that's but so what it I'm going to give you let me give you I'm going to pull it up. Let me try to find it real quick. Option to purchase. Can you see my screen? All right, so this is a blank option contract. Witness set. Look at that. King James, baby. Let's go. Hoorah. So you've got all of the details here, the seller and the purchaser, right? So an option is a something that we can buy that gives us rights to exercise. And so a purchase agreement in real estate, once the inspection period's done, is called a bilateral contract, which means both sides, the buyer and the seller, are obligated to perform as spelled out in the contract. Okay, so if one side does not perform, then the other side is entitled to damages. Standard practice, for example, is if the buyer does not perform on the contract as spelled out in the terms of the contract, then typically they forfeit the earnest money, and that's what the seller. If the seller accepts that, then they've received that as liquidated damages. Now, if the seller does not accept that, another option that the contract permits is that the seller can sue the buyer for specific performance. Where basically the seller, and this obviously this is who would want to do this, is going to be long and drawn out, and it's going to be expensive and costly. But if they wanted to, they could. The seller could take the buyer to court and with a contract, with documentation, and force the buyer to perform on the contract in a lawsuit, and also claim damages from attorney fees, whatever else, in the event. And as you following me here, So typically a seller will just take the earnest money and just relist the property and try to find another buyer. That's I mean, it's very rare that they're going to go and pursue that, but it has happened. Another option, I have a friend of mine in Arizona who was set to close on a mobile home park, and they got to the a couple days out before closing, and then the seller decided they didn't want to sell it. So my friend, who was the buyer, filed a lawsuit to make the seller perform as agreed on the contract, and that lawsuit is still in litigation. So does that make sense? So that's called bilateral, which both parties are obligated to perform. With an option agreement, one side of the party is obligated to perform, which would be the selling side. So if we, for example, let's say we put an option to purchase on 370 East Huisashi in San Antonio, and the seller accepted it, and we paid $150 for an option to buy with the agreed purchase price of $220,000 to be extra, and with the option to extend for 30 days. That would mean we have 30 days to exercise our option to purchase. So it buys us an option. So we can buy it under these terms, these preset terms, if we so want to. But if we don't want to, after the 30 days, the seller keeps the $150, and that's it. We have no more. We forfeited our option basically. Does that make sense? So when we have the option granted by the seller, now we can go and shop it out and sell our option to somebody else. And we can sell the option for 10 grand, for 5 grand, for 20 grand, and they can exercise the option in our stead as the buyer. But the seller can't say no. And so I'm just saying this allows us to forego opening up escrow, submitting earnest money, and it allows us to have some kind of control over the property without actually owning the property. Does that make sense? And so if we don't find a buyer, then we don't have to go and terminate the contract. We don't have to do any of that stuff. It's just we're yeah, and they just might not know about it. For example, like a lot of the subdivision developers, right? Like if they like D.R. Horton, RBK, whoever it is, like let's say they want to go out and buy 100-acre swath of land and develop 400 houses on it. Well, the process for developing land takes a long time, and like they've got to go through permitting, they've got to go through zoning, they've got to go through architecture, they've got to go through all this kind of stuff, where they get the local municipality grants them the ability to subdivide the land according to the plan that they have with infrastructure. You're talking about plumbing, you're talking about water, utilities, you're talking about sidewalks and roads and all of that jazz. That all has to be accounted for before they can break ground to start building. Sometimes that can take like 1 or 2 years for all that stuff to be done. And so if the builder goes and finds a piece of land that they want to develop, they'll go to the seller and usually give them an option to buy. And let's say they're going to buy it for $1 million, and they might give the seller, well, it's all negotiable. They might give them 40 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever it is, with a non-refundable option to be exercised within a period of time, like say 24 months. And so if they go and get all their stuff approved, they'll exercise the option, they'll buy the land from the seller, and they'll go and commence construction. Does that make sense? So it's actually not uncommon. They're actually pretty common, but they just have a lot of place in our repertoire. It just gives us another tool in our tool belt to get creative and make a deal happen. And like right now, like we need this deal to close to put the money in our bank to cover some expenses, which could be included with an earnest money deposit. This option would be a great option, pun intended, to not have to forfeit earnest money in an escrow account. Does that make sense? I think options are great. In my opinion, this is one of the most underutilized and powerful tool that we have as investors. 4. 3 pages with the fourth having a signature on it. And I would probably personally want to add a clause on it so that we can market the option. And that's it, man. I don't want to get too complicated and get too hairy, but those are basic documents that we have that we can use at our disposal, and we will need them. And so I wanted to make sure we're clear on the purchase and sales agreement. Some of the clauses that we have in there. The idea behind a clean title or a marketable title. That's super significant, super important. Like that, there's a lot that hinges on that. What an addendum is, what an amendment is, and what an option is. Do you guys have any questions? Do you think you could go and share that with somebody else and explain it to them how that works? Okay. Yeah. So what? There's a term that you're going to see, especially on the Texas real estate form. It's called consideration. And consideration just means, usually it can actually mean a promise, but it's not recordable. But usually it means money. So options are only valid in exchange for consideration. So usually it's called an option fee. Once we pay for the option, that goes right to the seller. Then that option is valid, and we can sue them for, like, if they go and sell it to somebody else or get a contract with somebody else. Dude, we're coming and we're getting, like, we're that's not happening. We're suing. It sucks to have to think like that, but it is what it is, and that's why you have courts of law to litigate these kind of things. Does that make sense? So I want to make sure we're clear on, like, the function of the contract, like what it means to have a clear or a non-clear title. I'll give you so another example. Let's say there's a divorce proceeding, right? And you and the wife and the husband are on the deed and on the title of the property. So, and let's say that in the court proceeding, it gets granted that the husband gets the property and the wife is going to go move across the country with her family. So how do we get the wife off the title? Well, one thing that could be done and filed is called a quit claim deed. And so the wife could sign paperwork and have it notarized and filed with the county clerk, saying that she has relinquished all claims and all rights to the property and forfeits them. And so when the title company comes up and if the husband wants to sell in the future, that quit claim deed should show up, and that should absolve the issue. It doesn't always, but it should. That's one thing. But let me give you an example of how an option would work. So I have tenants in my house right now in San Antonio, and the tenants that are renting the main house have expressed interest. They want to buy the house. They really like the house. They want to do ministry in the house, which I think is great. So they don't have money for a down payment right now. And let's say they come, and I've talked to them about doing an option. And so if we could negotiate a price that we're gonna sell it for, and the terms, because it's going to be an owner finance deal, that I want to open up a note with them that we're going to sell it for, and we agree to that, we would spell those terms out on the actual option agreements. We would sign it, we would have it notarized, and then when they pay me the negotiable option fee, I'm probably going to say, if they want 1 year, probably $5,000. If they want a 2-year option, I'll ask them for $10,000. That's non-refundable. That's my money. But that option fee would be applied towards the purchase price when they close, when they buy. You following me? And so if they decided, if we did a 2-year option with a $10,000 option fee, and I sold the house to them for $335,000, and I wanted a $35,000 down payment, and I would carry a $300,000 note for them, that $10,000 would either come off of the down payment or it would come off of the loan amount, but it would be applied to the purchase price somehow that we agree on and negotiate. and it's going to be agreed on and negotiated when we sign the option. And I cannot change the terms of this. I am obligated to perform. And so if they decided to exercise, that's the term that they use, exercise my option 18 months down the road, then we would go and draft up a purchase agreement according to the terms of the option, and then we would execute in like manner, and then they just buy it from me. And then we're done. Okay? But if I sign that option with them and they pay for it, I cannot go and sell that house to anybody else. That's it. That makes sense? Phenomenal tool. Phenomenal option. You guys have any questions, comments, or concerns?